Hi, everybody. Welcome to a very special episode of Chatting with Creators. I am so excited to be partnering with White Bear PR for this very special episode where we get to talk to several composers about their recent experience taking films to the world-renowned Sundance Film Festival. I'm also joined today by Berkeley student Nate as a guest co-host on the show for the first time. Nate, you want to give a quick intro for viewers who haven't heard your voice before?
Sure thing. Hello, everyone. My name is Nate Bryant. I'm currently a fifth semester student at Berkeley School of Music. My major is film scoring, and I am very much looking forward to getting some more insight and information and to hear about everyone's experiences composing and working with creators at Sundance.
All right, and let's jump right into it. For anyone on the panel, what does it mean to take a film to Sundance versus other film festivals? I mean, as a composer who's just come out of her undergrad, I've had so many films, do their festival circuit, but never come close to something like this.
Hi, I'm Heather McIntosh, composer of the film Cat Person. Susanna Fogel is the director. And I guess I'd say it was the first place I ever had a narrative film premiere back when I first started scoring. So it has a special place in my heart for that. And also the Institute as well, because I've tried like 6 times to get in that their film and sound program that they had before I finally got in. But so put those things together, and I think it's just kind of a little bit like home after 6 films up there. So it's special.
Hey, I'm Ryan Rummery, and the film I had was Food and Country, directed by Laura Gabbert. I'm a lot actually like Heather too. I think I tried 8 or 9 times to get into that Sundance lab, and it was just one of those things that I had like always tried for, other composers that had mentored me, had been a part of the lab or had films at Sundance, and it's just one of those wonderful things, just to be a part of and to like strive for. And also just the community involved within Sundance, it's just so much different than like Tribeca and South by. I feel like more people connect at Sundance than they do at other festivals. I don't know what you all think of that, but that's kind of been my past experience as well.
Hi, I'm Nanita Desai, and I'm the composer of The Deepest Breath, directed by Laura McGann, that premiered at Sundance this year. I live in London, in the UK, on the other side of the pond. So for me, I was first aware of Sundance quite a few years ago with the Sundance Music Lab program, and I didn't even think that it was something that it was such an unattainable reach for me to possibly even dream of attending the Sundance Music Lab. So I've been aware of the festival for years. And from my perspective, I mean, it's just grown over the last 20, 30 years, to be one of the most respected film festivals on the planet and on the circuit. So it's very, very competitive. They have thousands of entries. So to be one of the 130 odd films to have been selected is so prestigious, and many of the films have gone on to have such wide distribution and be award winning on the circuit that it's a huge cheer of joy. When my first Sundance was only January 2020 with another film, The Reason I Jump, and then of course the whole world shut down for 3 years after that, and then to come back again to Sundance with my next film was just it's like ticks one of my professional bucket lists, to be honest. So yeah, it's great.
Hi, my name is Patrick Johnson, and I'm the composer of a film called Scrapper, which was at Sundance this year, and it was directed by a director called Charlotte Reagan. And Sundance for me is really special. I also live in London, like Nanita does. We know each other. And yeah, I've only been once before, and it's a really, really special festival. I mean, in all senses, but also like as here from being from Europe, it feels like very, like Nanita said, unattainable and far away. So it's such a privilege to have been part of it. And also the setting of being in the snow, and there's something quite special about it for me, for sure.
Hey, I'm Dabney Morris. I composed music for the film Sometimes I Think About Dying, directed by Rachel Lambert at Sundance this year as well. And this is the first time I'd ever done Sundance, so or ever been there like with a film. So, and the thing that was wild to me about it going in, and I think that it meant a lot in a lot of ways, is because like all of a sudden, like in certain peer circles, like it sort of, people were like, oh, he's actually a composer. Like he's not, he's not just doing this music thing. And so I think that meant a lot. Like it sort of feels, like a little bit like, oh man, like it's sort of affirmation that, okay, I'm not horrible at this. I guess I do kind of know what I'm doing, and I should keep doing it, But yeah, it was an incredible experience. I'm so glad we got to go with our film.
My name is Brian McOmber, and my film was called Fair Play, directed by Chloe Domont. And I would probably just second everything everyone else has said. It's really fun to go from here in Los Angeles to a winter wonderland at Sundance. So it feels magical. It feels, it just feels like you're in a special place, and it is that as well. But other than that, I guess the only other thing I would add is for younger people, and I know this has happened to a lot of directors I've worked with, is if your film doesn't get into Sundance, don't feel like you failed. If this is to say, second what Dabney just said, when my first time going there, I was like, oh wait, maybe I am actually a composer. I wasn't even going to go. I'm just like a musician. And this happened, and I went, and next thing I know, I was at Cannes with another. I just it happened that way. And so Sundance was a big part of that. But I would say over the years, having a few films not get in, sometimes it can be a blessing too. I had one film that didn't get into Sundance, and it did really well at South by Southwest. And it ended up being the only film that was at Cannes that year in the director's fortnight. So yeah, don't let Sundance be the only thing that defines your career as a younger person. But yeah, it's obviously great to go. I'm sure everyone would agree. Was I the last one?
Yes, you are.
Okay.
Well, Jordan is yet to go, but
mic is muted.
They're figuring out their audio right now.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay,
It's
sorry.
Jordan.
Hi. Hey, Brian. I'm Jordan Dykstra. I composed the music for 20 Days in Mariupol, which was directed by Mstislav Chernov. And to kind of piggyback on what Brian was saying, when we found out we got in, Mstislav was like, what is Sundance? And everyone at the production company was like, this is a huge deal for us. We've never gotten a frontline documentary into Sundance. So he was quickly realizing that it was a lot more special than he could have imagined. But he's a first-time filmmaker, but he's a journalist and works for the AP. So he film festivals, I don't think were on his radar. That being said, he made an amazing film and did this very special, made this special document and did it. I think we all enjoyed seeing each other. That was very special. Not that unique to Sundance, but finally getting to be around all the filmmakers in person. At least for me, I was working remote the entire time. So yeah, that was special. And then in a very wintry wonderland type of place made it all the more special. So yeah.
I think that is everyone. So I'm going to throw a second question out there for you guys. All of you have experience in this by now, but how much do you find that film festivals, Sundance and non-Sundance included, consider the importance of musical score in their judging process?
Okay, I'm going to be first off the bat here and be controversial, maybe not so controversial, and say that if you're judging the film and all the other the non-musical categories, I think that the music is not considered as being very important in the process, and there's a very valid reason for that. I mean, you know, juries are non-mute, tend not to be composers. You know, they're filmmakers in some whatever capacity. So I think obviously the score does affect people on a very subconscious level, and that is having an effect on how the film is being perceived for them. But unless there's an award specifically for music, for best music, juries don't really consider it because they're not aware of it. And some people may argue and say, well, you know, I mean, if the music is great, you're not going to notice it in a film. If the music is noticed, then you go, something's wrong here, you know, something's not quite working, because the music has to be embedded into the narrative and the sonic landscape of the film so that it works harmoniously with the film. And that's, I think, when you have a really successful score, whether it's subtle or whether it's bold and distinctive and noisy and shouty as a musical score. I think that music has a huge impact on, it's the hidden character in a film. But whether juries actively notice it and realize how important it is to their perception is something that's perhaps a little overlooked and hidden.
I would love to hear a jury answer this question. I would be very curious. I have a few acquaintances who have done such a thing, and some of them are arguably bigger music files than I am, and some of them really don't like music at all. And so I'm in the boat where I feel like it's case by case, you know, like a film like Dabney's. You should talk about yours, because music is such a feature, and it was mixed to be heard very specifically, like as such. That film, you know, you'd be missing so much if you didn't take that into account. Versus like a documentary like mine, it's a lot of underscore, you know. It's like, it's really not meant to be heard, it's just meant to be felt. That being said, there's always moments where you can bring this stuff out, but I don't know, kind of case by case, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, I think I would agree. I mean, I think it just depends on the film, right? I mean, I don't think that there's one way that a score is supposed to be, in the same way that there's not one way that cinematography is supposed to be. There's not one way that a performance is supposed to be. It all just depends on the larger narrative of the film. So I would agree with Nanita that if score is doing the right job, it's building towards the greater thing, which is the film itself. So I think that I wouldn't imagine that any jury is going to be like, man, the film was horrible, but damn, that score. So let's like knock it to the, you know, I mean, you know, listen, if you're the composer on that film and you win because everyone's like, we hated the film, but the score was incredible, like good for you. But I don't think anybody here would say, like, you know, have ever thought like, yeah, I hope that's the case. Like, people notice the score more than the film. You know, it's like, it's all working towards one larger, you know, piece, which is bigger than all the parts, but it's the sum of the parts, I guess.
Yeah, it's definitely just a big part of the storytelling. You know, we're all aiming toward that. And when it all sings together, that's, you know, hopefully that's why we're doing it, is to like really find that sweet spot of marrying, you know, picture and sound. So we're part of it, definitely. But yeah, like Dabney said, probably not just because of the score.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a really good point. I was surprised when I, you know, went to the Sundance website for the first time, and on almost all their homepages, the word score comes out once regarding music. And when it comes up, it has to do with specifically the film The Territory. That's the only time it comes up.
I would also say though that one thing I like about the festival is when they post all the credits on the website, they always list the composer. If they're brought up, they put the composer. A lot of other film festivals, kind of it's just because of resources, like they don't have the man or female or person power to like actually put in every credit. So like you might have the director, editor, and the stars, but you may not always have our role in there. And I would love to have that changed more so we can really see what's going on, what's making the pudding, if you say. I don't know.
Yes, absolutely. And sometimes the credit needs to say stock music, because sometimes that's what happens.
Or just not listed, either way, but yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have to agree. Sorry to interrupt. I mean, I have to
go for it.
I have to agree with Heather, is that one of the loveliest things about Sundance is the way they acknowledge music in very subtle ways and not so subtle ways, with the support that composers have during the festival. But that's one thing that I really noticed, is that you go on the website and you're browsing through the films and you go, oh, they've actually bothered to mention who the composer is, or the DOP or the editor, but specifically the composer. And there are very rare to find other festivals that do that on their websites. So yay to Sundance for doing that.
I would say also that some festivals, like I know South by Southwest has sort of a whole section devoted to music documentaries. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean at all that us composers would be featured, honestly, even less in those situations. But again, every film festival is quite different. Their programming is quite different. The kind of films and even the kind of like stories they want to platform are going to be quite different. So Sundance, again, has one particular thing. And I think all of us would agree that, or at least I don't know of any other film festival that has labs for composers like this. I've never done them, but I would have loved to, but also I, like everyone else here, probably applied and got turned down at one point. So, however, I think like there is a lot more resources within Sundance dedicated to film composing, but that like you could have your film play at Sundance and the score could get more notice than any other film festival, or it could go to a different film festival and get more notice. I don't know how you would maybe how you'd objectively judge that, but it is true that the descriptions do include composer, which is really nice, and that little thing, such a small thing, but I think for what we do and knowing, and I think the directors and producers especially appreciate that, we're oftentimes such a fabric of the work itself. It's nice to be recognized, and yeah, I guess that's all to add.
Awesome. I'm going to pop us to our next question. Do you think that emerging film composers, people who are now, making that leap from student or hobbyist into professional, should they be more aware of film festivals in general and be participating more? I mean, I know that when I was an undergrad, I'd have my friends who were film students and be like, yeah, we have this week off because we're all going to this music festival, and they consider it to be really important as part of our education for us to be participating in these things. And myself, who was studying film composition, I was like, wait, should I also be going to these things? Because I had only ever gone to festivals if I had a film that I had scored that was going to be in it.
I suppose.
Sorry. Go ahead.
No, go. Okay. I'll go first. I would say, I would suppose if it's not time or cost prohibitive, I think these festivals can be a little expensive sometimes to attend and to fully take advantage of if you don't have a film. And even when you do have a film, sometimes it can be. But if you can make it work somehow, if you can crash. The first times I went, first time I went, was lucky to have a feature there, and the director booked a house for us all, and we were able to crashed on the couch. It was great. But my experience after that, not every production is willing to put up composers. And so you might spend $300 a night on a room. And if you want to stay for the festival and really take advantage of it and, have the opportunity to just bump into people, start conversations, and maybe start some sort of relationship that might evolve into working together someday, you kind of, it doesn't hurt to be there and to be on the ground. However, I would just say that you don't have to do that. And also, it's not something I think everyone can afford, either just with the funds or sometimes the time. But I don't think it can hurt to show up. I would just say that, you have a film there, you're part of a crew, they're going to get you into these sometimes, unfortunately, like just there's a lot of guards like literally keeping you out, pushing you out of the way if your name's not on a list to get into this or that party. So my experience has been, it's been good if you have a film there and your production is really generous. Other times, maybe it's not so important. I don't know. Does anyone else? I don't want to be too negative here, but I wonder if anyone else has that experience over the years. Maybe Heather, maybe you do. I know you've been going for a while.
Patrick, you go ahead and then I'll jump in.
No, I was going to say, I totally agree with you, Brian, on everything. It's like all the points, like if you're able to do it, then it's fantastic. I mean, there's so many, I guess being a composer is quite a solitary profession in general. So like being able to be in a place where you're celebrating with the rest of the team, like I met crew members now in Sundance that I'd never met before, and we'd like Instagram messaged or something, say like, hey, good job, but now we actually got to hang out, and they're wonderful people and they're friends for life now. And also there's like the side of actually going to watch films. It doesn't have to be Sundance, it can be your local film festival down the road that's like doesn't cost X amount of money to go to and stuff. Like, just someone said earlier that like all festivals are different and curated differently. And I think there's something interesting about like, okay, what's the topic in that particular festival right now? It's like, just absorb all that information and bump into people who are, you're like, oh, I hated that. That was no good. But then this one over here, I loved it. And that resonates with me, and the people that go to that, like I connect with them. And I don't know. So it can't hurt. I think like Brian says, like, it's probably worth thinking about. I don't think it's something you have to like track or something. It's not like, just for career purposes or something, but I think it can help enrich you and your relationships, and you probably will bump into people that you have a kinship with and might work with together in the future. That's my take.
Yeah, I definitely would say, like, I know if you have a film, definitely try to go. Like, definitely try to go, and then also just try to see as much stuff beyond your premiere as you can, especially with shorts and all the various like integrated media projects where you can really just sort of like find your own creative team beyond your film. And then also with your films, I feel like, that first film that I worked on that went to Sundance, like one of the actors in it, who I would never have met if I wasn't at the festival, had a film that he directed. And then I ended up scoring that film. And then the producer from that film brought me on for another project, that brought me on to the thing that the editor was on from the next thing. Like, it's just like that more organic version of like, I used to want to puke in my mouth when I'd hear the word networking, but like, there's something really beautiful about finding people that are making art that you connect to and you want to connect with them. And so I feel like that's a beautiful place for it. Another thing, if you're, of course, money is stressful, go with a car full of people, hop in however you can, share a room. Or there also is volunteer, there's a ton of volunteers there. And I know composers who have gone in the past when they first were figuring out their career, just to be able to see everything and meet all these other great filmmakers. So like, and I do believe they've set up housing for you if you're a volunteer, or they can, or help you. So it'd be worth looking into that. I don't know with the new formatting how that works, but I know that tons of filmmakers, they're all film integrated people that are doing that volunteer work. And they're such an important part to the festival.
Yeah, yes to everything everyone said. Totally agree with you all. And I mean, I started going to there's a major festival in the UK that I started going to about 12 years ago, and I was going to this festival when there were no other composers there. So going to festivals on a multi-layered level. You've got two levels. One, just to enjoy being watching other people's creativity, other people's films. It's so enriching, and that's a wonderful thing to attend. Not just movies but going to talks. I mean, I went to a talk at Sundance this year about intimacy coordinating, and I felt I could connect with it on a music level because it was really interesting. So, and then I met other people and we just got to hang out and expanded my network from that. But then also on the other hand, on the business side of things, networking, that horrible word, but I've made connections at this festival in the UK when I first started going about 12 years ago, that transformed my career. I met a filmmaker. I went to a pitching panel, which had nothing to do with music. And I watched other filmmakers squirm in front of commissioners and execs trying to get their films made. And it was a public forum where a whole audience sitting there watching directors and filmmakers pitch their film. And one of the films that won, I actually approached the filmmaker afterwards and said, I love your story. I would love to work with you. And he said, yeah, sure. Let's keep in touch. It took 3 years for him to get that film made. And we kept in touch and I scored it. And that just transformed my career. And there's another, and the same thing happened again when I went to the festival about 4 years ago. And I went to a screening. It was the last day of the festival. It was 9 o'clock in the morning, and I just loved the sound and the story of this film. And I was going to grab a train back to London, and I thought, I've got 3 hours to kill. I'm going to watch this movie. I watched it. Listened to the Q&A afterwards. Went up to the director, said, I loved your film, and he said, we had a great chat, and we met up in London a few months later, and we kept in touch. And 2 years later, he contacted me and said, I've got a film that I think we can collaborate on. Would you like to score it? And that film got into Sundance 3 years ago and won the Audience Award at Sundance. So my takeaway is that you never know where your connections are going to come from. And it's just, you get to meet like-minded souls. You just get on and you appreciate other people's creativity. It's just the best thing to go to a festival if you can afford it. And it was a big deal for me. I couldn't afford it and I had to scrape my pennies together, sleep on someone's couch. But boy, it was worth it, those sort of 12 years ago.
I think something to add to all this, I think something I've learned during the pandemic is just doing a lot of projects remote and not being around people. And then, things kind of simmering a little bit right now, and just the value of being at Sundance and being around people, and also, just other film festivals. And I find that after a couple of years of having meetings with directors and producers over Zoom, you think you're connecting with someone, but you really do. I think at least for me, I feel like I connect better when I'm in the room, with someone and my ideas, or I'm talking about something and just, meeting people. And the director that for my film, Laura Gabbert, I did additional music in it. And it was this film called City of Gold. And I actually came to the premiere of it to meet her and to talk to her, because she didn't know me because the editor just put the music in. And if I wouldn't have done that, I probably never would have had that relationship that I have with her now. And I just strongly feel that it's so great to be in the same room with people, as it was to meet some of you all that's on this panel in person. And it's just so empowering to be a composer, because I'm sitting in my little workspace right now and hardly ever get to leave it. So it's really great to just be out of this space and meet people and hang out with them.
That is super insightful. Kind of moving on to something that you had just said, Ryan. What are some of the greatest challenges or issues that you all have faced, whether it be musical, technical, or communications wise, while working on these films, especially for those of you like yourself, Ryan, who have probably had to deal with a majority of remote work or communication over long distances?
Do you mean about the specific project that we worked on?
Yeah, it can be a specific
the
project or anything in the past that you have experienced in that realm as well.
Yeah, so on this film, Scrapper, I think one of the biggest challenges I was facing was trying to figure out what the tone should be of the film, to be honest. I mean, I guess that's a lot of projects, but this one in particular I found really difficult. It's about a 12-year-old girl named Georgie, and I think we knew pretty early on that we wanted it to be from her perspective. And it's a film about grief. She just lost her mom, and her dad, who hasn't been in the picture since she was born, comes back after her mom dies. And so it's a film about grief, but it's full of comedy and joyful moments and sort of youthful exuberance, and it's also quite fantastical in a lot of moments, and from her imagination. So what does that sound like, that combination of things, and how do you find the balance where you don't stray into being overly dramatic, but also how do you capture also the sort of flurry of activity and in a mind that can't quite express itself properly because it's not mature yet. It's a child. So it was trying to find these sort of fluttering textures that could sort of exist almost like a cacophony in her mind, but also full of warmth and life at the same time. And there's, without giving too much away, in the film, there's this structure that she builds, which is out of metal, and it's sort of how she sort of deals with her grief, and it's sort of like built of like bicycles and pots and pans and various things, and it's this sort of mountain she has to climb in order to conquer her grief in a way. And so I knew I wanted it to be made of metallic sounds because it's in the film, and if that whole thing we were talking about earlier about having it be sort of like really linked to the fabric of the project. So how do you use metallic instruments but still have something really warm and sort of staying on the right side of things? So for me, that was my biggest challenge, and hopefully we managed to achieve it. But it was a great challenge. I really enjoyed it, and the director was amazing to keep pushing me always.
Yeah, my film is The Deepest Breath, and it's a feature documentary focused on one of the most extreme sports in the world today, freediving. But this film is so much more than that. It's not really a sports documentary. It's a film that follows this champion freediver, Alessia, this young Italian woman who, following her from the age of 12 as she becomes a world champion freediver. And she forms this trusting bond and beautiful friendship with this expert safety diver who she ends up working with, and they fall in love. And it's a very multi-layered film emotionally. It's this personal journey, and it was very challenging in terms of finding the tone of the film. Working with the documentary director Laura McGann, it's her kind of a debut feature documentary, and so I guess communication and language was an interesting hurdle. I remember Laura saying to me that she finds it very difficult to communicate what she wants musically, and I said, please don't speak to me in terms of music. Just she would create these amazing Spotify playlists and find music from all over the place, and we'd spend hour-long, sort of hours and hours of long conversations dissecting what she liked about these pieces and these elements of music, kind of electronics or strings, and what it was that it meant to her. So we ended up creating for these two characters in the film, two tonally separate sort of palettes of sounds for their music. Stephen, this safety diver she falls in love with, is the cello and the strings are his sound, and Alessia, she's kind of sort of contemporary, edgy, bold. So we'd have electronics, but with the human voice as well, the female voice, and then these two elements come together as we discover they fall in love, which is really beautiful. And but then we also having to deal with other voices in the film, which are exec producers, and I think I'd been worked on the whole film for just under a year. We were in the edit for a very long period of time, and the score obviously naturally evolves organically while you're working on the film. And these other voices came in and said, "We don't want these electronics. Take them out. We love the organic acoustic quality to the music." So after working on it for about 7 or 8 months, I had this total sort of gear change in having to rethink some of the elements, some of the cues, which was a challenge. And I think, everyone has a very valid perspective and point of view, and I think they were right in the end. Though I would love to have injected a little bit more electronica into the cues, but it's and also the sound quality of the film with the archive was very poor quality, and you have a lot of the film is filmed underwater, these beautiful, amazing underwater sound and seascapes. So sonically, I was having to, technically, it was quite a challenge to blend create music that could, with stems that we could then hear and battle against the sound design and the old archive quality of the audio. So that was, we got there in the end, and sometimes the sound would lead and sometimes the music would lead. And you'd hear these heartbeat type sounds you'd actually hear. The opening of the film starts off with someone in real time diving down 100 meters and diving back up. And all you hear is the sound of the heart just getting slower and slower and slower until there is no heartbeat when the diver comes up to the surface. And you're witnessing this film in real time. And for me, that's one of the most powerful moments in the film, but there's no music on it. So, it's just finding that balance between where to place music and where not to have music is really important in how it affects us emotionally. So that was a fun challenge, fun challenges over the course of the film.
Sometimes I don't know how fun that can be when a producer jumps in the ninth hour and says they want to hear this or that, having not done that at any point. I just wanted, because that kind of gave me shivers of an experience where I worked really, really hard on the score with two directors who also had two different opinions. I've done a couple different films that have more than one director, but and in the end, I should just say also, everyone has the film's best interest in mind. I'm not saying anyone's trying to sabotage anything. Producers oftentimes have come in after I finished something and said something like, I don't hear a melody that I can remember. I watched the film and the melody didn't stick in my head. Mm-hmm. And I remember talking with the directors and be like, well, we didn't talk about melody at all. In fact, we wanted to push away from having a melody. So when is this coming in? And one of the so to get to the question, one of the harder things for me in the past has been making everyone happy when everyone has completely different ideas about what the score is to be. And I'm sure I see a lot of heads nodding here. So that's one thing that's trickiest for me as I get older doing this stuff is, at what point do you bring the producers in? At what point do you just trust that the director has the complete trust of the producers? In the case with this movie, Fair Play, the producers didn't ask me about anything other than what I needed and when it was going to be ready, which was great. And it was because Chloe, the director, made everyone fear her. I mean, she was just a force to be reckoned with. And I just loved that. I love when a director is fierce and is going to stand up for what they believe in. But you can't always say that. And in this situation I just mentioned, where the producers asked me to kind of go back and do that, and the directors were like, well, can we? And I said, I guess we can. We should. I think the music became better. So I'm not saying every time. It was just something that well, I wish I knew that from the beginning. Maybe I could have saved myself a lot of time and money, because the other most difficult part about what we do is making budgets, figuring out exactly how to allocate those resources. Like maybe you wanted to, like you were just talking about a whole electronic score. Well, I see you have a lot of electronics back there, so you can probably do that yourself. But if you then show it to the producers and they're like, well, I was hoping for a string quartet. Well, then we have to go back to the board. We've already agreed on all these terms, and maybe we need to figure out about, putting up some additional funds to do that. So those for me are the most difficult things about making film scores. Actually, making music is, I was saying it to the other day, it's sort of for me like taking a shower. I just do it and it comes, and sometimes I'd take a really, really awesome shower, Other times, I just sit in the shower and I'm just like thinking, and I realize I've just been sitting in the shower wasting water for 5 minutes, but maybe not the best shower. I use that as the driest analogy I can, because making music, I just turn on the water and I make music. But to make music that is going to work for the picture, work for what the director wants, what the director what the producer's idea of the picture is, that's the difficult part. Is making everybody happy, and coming up with language to specifically with the director and maybe producers that they can relate to, and that you can figure out how to express ideas back and forth, take feedback and that kind of thing, because you're dealing with a lot of people that maybe don't have the same experience and in a lot of cases musical training that some of us would have. That's one of the trickier parts, just to add to that last point there.
Yeah. You should make I write music like I take a shower your Twitter bio. First of all. Second, that sounds like a great book. I don't know what the book would be about, but it would be a good book.
Yeah. You don't meet a lot of guys that talk about, brag about being good at showering. A lot of guys want to talk about being good musicians, though. No shortage there. I don't want to be one of those people.
Awesome.
I would also second that. Hey. Okay.
And also me and Jordan worked, we actually worked on a couple films together here at Sundance. So we collaborate a lot. So Jordan's heard me say this kind of stuff all the time. He's like, we sort of like are therapy for each other, especially speaking on my behalf, Jordan. Appreciate you.
Yeah, I appreciate you too. The language can be, like piggybacking on what you're saying, the language with the director and the producer, whoever you're talking with, editor, whatever, is like perpetually an interesting and unique process. And so feeling out what to say, like literally what words to say, and when we're going to talk about a new version of a new cue is so paramount. And just by doing the process and getting co-composing a lot of stuff with Brian, and just seeing the process be different every time, you kind of need to walk that walk and just try it out. And it's always strange and unique and interesting too. Yeah. I don't think I've ever worked on a film project where the music ended up how I thought it would. And that's really exciting for me. It's just how you get there to the end while maintaining your, your presence, your essence of where you feel your music stands and what really shines or is meaningful to you at that moment. Not that it's a precious thing, but that it's yours, you got to make sure it's yours. So it can be tough.
I just add real quick, when you first get once you get that job, it's great. Sort of piggybacking off these other ideas is the spotting session can also be who do we need to make sure hears this? If you're who are the guys and gals that we need, the folks that we need to make sure know about the music and how it's progressing as you go along. I feel like that's something that over the pandemic was hard when you're just in Zoom, and sometimes you're in Zoom with the editor and the director in the same room and everyone's wearing a mask or something like that. And it's really hard to get eyes on everyone. And it was really important for me. I actually went to New York a couple times for spotting and an early friends and family screening, and just to really have as many opportunities to really connect. And just remember, like, those spotting sessions are usually beyond just like music in and out, but like you can really take that as an opportunity to really connect with your filmmakers and really like get to those bigger questions. It can be so powerful. And if you can be in the same room, it's awesome. I remember now. It's awesome. Great.
Awesome. Well, thank you all so much. It has been a ton of fun having you on this panel and getting to do this. I think this is one of my favorite episodes that I've had on this show so far, and we're on season 4 now. It just makes me feel old, even though I'm 22. So thank you all for your time and for your great insights into Sundance and the recent films you've worked on. Have a great weekend, and thanks for being on the show. Bye.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks. Bye.
Awesome. I wasn't sure if Heather was going to leave by herself.